Welcome back to the Daily Bible Breakdown, and today our passage is Genesis chapter 6 through 9, which brings us to another very familiar story, the story of Noah's Ark. But also we're going to be seeing that recurring theme we already mentioned about God's judgment and His mercy and grace. Chapter 6 gives us the setting, and based on the genealogies we read in Genesis chapter 5, we know that about 1,600 years have passed from that time until the time in chapter 6. During that time, the population has increased dramatically, but they have also grown increasingly more wicked. The Bible also mentions that there were giants during this time, and there are a lot of questions people have about those giants, and perhaps we can deal with those on another day. But all we need to know is that the population grew dramatically. There was a great amount of wickedness, so much so that the Bible says in chapter 6, verse 6, that it repented the Lord that He made them. So God was grieved by the choices His creation was making. They were choosing to disobey Him and getting more and more wicked. And so God said He was going to judge them. In 120 years, He was going to wipe them all off the face of the planet. But of course, we know there was one man, Noah, who found grace in the eyes of the Lord. I don't know if you've ever felt like you're the only person in any given situation who wants to do what's right, but in the case of Noah and his family, that was pretty much true. He was the only one wanting to do what was right. And so God devised a plan so that Noah and his family could be saved, as well as all the animal life on earth, that they could be preserved. And it involved building this huge 3-story boat we call the Ark. And it was about 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, made of what the Bible calls gopher wood. And if you're hoping to go look for gopher wood, you'll probably be disappointed, because nobody really knows what kind of tree that was. In fact, the Hebrew word just sounds like gopher in English. That's why it's called gopher wood in our Bible. So he builds this ark. Now that takes him 100 years. 100 years to build the ark. He and his sons are building it. All during this time, he's preaching, warning the people, but they're not listening. In fact, they're mocking him because he's talking about a judgment that's going to come and rain that's going to fall from heaven. And they'd never seen rain. God had never watered the earth that way up to this point. And so it was something they were completely caught off guard by. They had never heard about rain. So Noah preaches and builds during these 100 years. Ultimately, the time comes for them to load up on the ark. God shuts the door. No one else is getting on. And He sends the rain. According to chapter 7, it rains for 40 days and 40 nights, and the flood covers the entire earth. Again, a lot of people debate, is it possible that the entire earth was flooded? Certainly it was just a local flood, but no, we take the Bible at face value when it says the entire earth was flooded and that all life on the face of the earth was destroyed. The waters remain then for about 150 days after the flood is over. And in chapter 8, we read that eventually God sent a wind to dry up the remaining water, and Noah and his family were able to safely get off of the ark. At that point, we're in chapter 9, and we're reading about a new covenant that God makes there with Noah and with his family. They are tasked with repopulating the earth. They're now going to be allowed to eat meat. And a very important law is given at this point. It's really the beginning of human government. And it's found in Genesis chapter 9 and verse 6, where it says, "Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man." Remember, when we talked about Genesis 1 and 2, we mentioned there were some important implications of us being made in God's image. This is one of them. Because we're made in God's image, we all have inherent value. Every human being has inherent value. And no man is to take another man's life. And now, in this case, God has established a penalty, and God has established human government so that if someone takes someone's life, their life is to be taken. God also promised at this point that He would never again destroy the earth by a flood. And He gave them a symbol of this promise, the rainbow that He put there in the sky. And so now every time we see that, we can be reminded of what happened here and of God's promise never to destroy the earth by water again. That's going to be it for our daily Bible breakdown today, and we'll see you tomorrow as we discuss Genesis chapters 10 and 11.